Wanted to say a quick thanks. I'm Renee Paleo, very lucky to be the program manager of the 30 and the 30 program of the Ford Fund and the Volunteer Corps. Very excited to have this discussion for you. Very excited for you guys to experience what you have already. But more than that, we're just very proud of these employees and these nonprofits. So before we go, please, let's give a big round of applause to the nonprofits. So we have Ruth Ellis Center, South Oakland Shelter, Cass Community Social Services, the United Way of Hamilton Halton in Canada, First Step, and Macomb Habitat for Humanity. So we also want to say a special thanks. This would not happen without the offices of the Executive Chairman, Bill Ford, specifically in the office, Mary Culler for letting us do this, and her support has been amazing, Don Pryor as well. Todd Nissen and I, we literally take a couple steps back every time we meet with the fellows and just are pretty astounded by this. So the support from the leadership on down has been amazing. To you supervisors of the fellows here, thank you for giving the time and for believing in your employees. You'll see not only the fact that we the fund, get a chance to utilize their talents. We hope that they bring something back to the job, and I hope that you guys can see that too. So with that, I want to introduce you to our panelists. We have Ishmael Amagashi, Lanny Duffy, Munib Hamed, Brendan Webb, Aparna Vella. Help me.
You got it.
You were on a roll, Renee.
I was trying.
I was
You should have put her at the end.
In San Martin's. And I'd like to introduce Jim Vella, president of the Ford Fund, whom, if you don't know, is someone that literally has been a design thinker for nonprofits in the community for a long time. And so to have him be our leader for the fund has been amazing. So we're very excited about that. We're also excited that he gets a chance to kind of, in Jim fashion, said, you know what, you guys gave me these questions, but we're going to go off script on this. So with that, I'll get Jim lead the discussion.
Okay. So again, I just want to reiterate some of the things that Renee pointed out, which was, first of all, thank you all for coming today. We need the support of the whole Ford team in order to do this. And you know, when we started out on this and we started talking to people about we're going to take some of your best employees out of the workplace for a while, we got a few looks, like, you know, have you looked at your objectives next to mine and that kind of thing. But thank you for allowing us to steal them for a while. I actually feel personally like this is a privilege for me to be able to work with these very talented young people in our company. We've gotten a lot more out of this than we ever expected. It has really gone beyond any expectations we have. Each of the programs, as I look at them, it's like having your own R&D department at the fund and not having to pay for it. So that's really cool. And it really also shows me that the future of our company is in really good hands. And the vision that all of you have, not only for in your work life, but for finding the time to do this on the side, I hope that you find as rewarding as I have in my time here. And every time we go through this, I get energized again to push even harder because you're coming up with great ideas and solutions that are really going to change the world and change people's lives. And it's really on your generation's shoulders now to take us to the next level. So for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to do this kind of as we talked about before, where I really want to have more of a discussion with you about what you think you learned from this process. Any surprises that you had about it? Anything you want to talk about in terms of what you might change going forward? This year, for the first time, we had a team from outside the U.S., our Canadian team. So I'd like to hear from that team, not only up here but afterwards, how you think it worked for you and how we might go forward to do it in the future. So we'll just start on the end. And anything you want to tell us about what you learned, how important the design thinking process was, and we'll kind of start there.
Yeah, name's Ishmael, as was initially established. And
so you might also just, as you start, say a little bit about what you worked on,
yeah.
and where you work in the company, how long you've been with Ford.
Okay. Been with Ford since 2015, so about 3 years. And I work in electrified powertrain engineering as a package and release engineer for battery electric vehicles, transit. So that's what I do for Ford. What I'm doing with 30 Under 30 is the Ruth Ellis Foundation is who I'm supporting. As a few of you who've come by the booth have already heard, what they do is they support LGBTQ youth, specifically with a lot of different varieties of sort of support services. The focus is to get past acceptance and to get into thriving and the sort of blossoming that comes with that. And our goal is to help in whatever way we can. Specifically, the digital platform is our sort of solution to that. And what it does is it takes sort of the physical Ruth Ellis location and makes it digital. So all of a sudden, the things you'd be able to do on location, you can do in the palm of your hand. And as we understand, the subject is sensitive, right? We're talking about coming out as gay, lesbian, etc. And that's not something that is as easy as, anything else you might have admitted to your parents historically. So, having access to the platform from the comfort of your room allows you, your bedroom, for instance, allows you the ability to really understand the challenges of coming out before you even proceed down that path. Perhaps find a mentor that helps with this, etc. We can get into the full detail once you guys stop by the booth again, but I'll go on. I'm going forever. But design thinking. My very first interaction with it was through the 30 Under 30 program. Initially, like anything you get introduced to, there's a certain amount of maybe questioning of, is this really going to work? Is this sort of too cookie cutter, et cetera? But it works. Because, the biggest part of it that I would highlight without question has to be empathy and the amount of conversations around that. And we're supposed to spend a certain amount of time at the center as part of our experience. But what we ended up doing was spending way more time because we started to build personal relationships. Phone numbers were exchanged, text messages started to fly, phone calls, etc., social media. And before you knew it, these were friends. These were not just Ruth Ellis people, right? And then that gaining of trust now starts to set off a set of reactions that allows you to come up with a solution that is better sort of suited to the people. I think that was sort of the crucible that forged the digital platform, and that's why it is as effective as at least the prototypes of it seem to be. So empathy would be the biggest takeaway for sure. Yeah.
I'm Lonnie Duffy. I've been working with Habitat for Humanity, Macomb County, and our exhibit is back there. So if you want to hear more about it, please stop by. One of the biggest...
And they have candy.
We do have candy. One of the biggest takeaways that I've learned through this whole process is just how much of the design thinking process our legal team already uses. I'm in Ford Credit Legal with Marlene and Rob, and also with some of my coworkers, Marion and Joanne, and I've learned a lot from the team just about looking deeper, asking questions, not making assumptions. And that was one of the big things with our design thinking process here in 30 Under 30. What we were talking about is your solution actionable and transformative? And then the way they described it was the Titanic. So the Titanic's gonna hit an iceberg. How do you stop that from happening? Do you just rearrange the chairs on the deck, or do you find a solution that's deeper? And I feel like at Ford Credit Legal, we try to get to the root cause of things. Through the complaint process, we try to think about what's the customer experience? What's this customer complaining about? And then we try to make it better for our customers. So I was just very surprised how the process we used here for the 30 Under 30 translates back to our office, as well as how it translated back to our project. We were looking at the Habitat for Humanity application process for a home mortgage. So for Habitat for Humanity, people don't get free homes. They have to apply for a mortgage to get an affordable home. And so through that process, we were looking at the application. How do we make this application easier? It's the same thing that we do at Ford Credit Legal every day, looking to see how do we make our contracts more readable? How do we make extensions easier for people to understand? It's the same type of process, so that's what I was really surprised through this whole project.
Hello, everyone. I'm Munib Hamid. I'm currently in FCG, and my rotation is in Global Consumer Insights and Marketing. So I do user and market research in my daily job. So first off, thank you to Jim Vella and the Ford Fund for giving us this privilege and this opportunity to serve on 30 Under 30 and to serve the communities that we have served. One thing about design thinking that has really taken me is just the way it enables our team to work so fearlessly together. There's no type of hesitation whenever we're thinking about ideas, and that's a big shout out to Joseph, Jack, Leah, Christiana back there. They have just been so, it's been amazing to see how open the possibilities become when you have a team that's as fearless, as encouraging, as just like, they just jump on every solution that you talk about and they take it further. And then somebody else jumps on what they took and then we take it further. And that type of collaboration is something that I haven't always experienced in my daily job, and that's something that I'd love to be able to bring. But when you think of ideas with that fearlessness, then you develop solutions that have never been done before. You reach heights that you have never reached before, and those limitations do not exist anymore because you know that somebody has your back with another solution that could work. And if there's any type of limitation, we think about, okay, how can we make this work? And taking that same power of our team to Cass Community Social Services, hello, Rep Fowler back there. She's awesome. And so Cass Community Social Services has done just an amazing job at what they do. They provide basic needs very well. They serve 700,000 meals every year. They house over 900 people. They employ over 70 residents that are at Cass. So it was a challenge for us to realize, okay, what can we do with an organization that's already doing everything very well? So when we first came in there, we were like, all right, we're done. Like they have done everything. And so back to what Ish said about the empathy, that was critical in us continuously iterating and trying to get deeper and deeper with what was it that we can help and where can we fit in with a potential solution. And that's when we realized, when we actually started to engage with the residents, that beyond basic needs, there is a lot more that they struggle with and that they go through. So there's this whole web of difficulties that they struggle with and that they hold even after getting food and water. And if you think of yourself, it's the same thing. If somebody hands you food and water, is that enough to help you live a satisfied life? Probably not. So that's one thing that when we actually started to engage, we realized that, I'll just share a short story if that's okay. We had lunch with one of the residents, and it was just a very pivotal experience because we just sat there to have lunch. It was pretty normal. We introduced ourselves. And after that, he just the individual who we were having lunch with, he just completely spilled his whole story to us. He was in tears by the end of it. We had barely said any words. It was just a couple questions to help facilitate the conversation. But it made us realize that these residents really don't have that means for expression, that means of release. And that's often why substance abuse is a big issue amongst the homeless community. That's a common thing where that release is not there. That pressure is building up, but they don't have nowhere to take it, or the relationships to be able to deal with those. So that's kind of the solution that we developed in order to get at that deeper need of helping their creative expression, helping them develop the skills they need to become employable, and also just taking their stories and being able to share them, because one of the key things that we discovered is that these individuals are human beings and they have the same exact needs and desires and aspirations just like me and you.
Sorry, thanks. I think my mic's working. All right, hello everybody. Brendan Webb. I am with the Ford of Canada team. So first year being part of the 30 Under 30, which is pretty amazing. I think I speak on behalf of the 5 of us that this has just been an amazing experience and something that we really want to bring back to our Canadian teams. So it's funny, I made the joke to United Way when we did a presentation that when we started this journey, the only thing I knew was that we were under 30. I didn't know where we were going with this whole process. So the not-for-profit partner that we have is United Way of Hamilton Halton. Most of the group is from part of that community. And when we came on board, Hamilton Halton are two vastly different regions. One being one of the most affluent regions in Canada, and one being probably the most in-need communities in Canada. So how do we work with United Way, trying to cater to both areas of Ontario? So the whole process has been amazing. I'm definitely going to relay what Ish said. Empathy was probably the biggest step to design thinking, and the biggest thing I think we can bring back to the company. To a certain extent, I think we were almost ignorant, or at least I was, to the issues of homelessness, right? Especially in an affluent community, sometimes it's hidden very well, and you don't know who's in need, versus Hamilton, where there's actually housing units available, but people don't want to relocate for services or transportation challenges, etc. So empathy was definitely one of the biggest stage. Personally, and I think for the group, design thinking has just opened us up to new ideas. Really, it's a mindset. It's not something that you're going to change overnight. It's not something that you can bring back to a Monday morning meeting and implement for Tuesday morning. It's a journey. I still think we're only scratching the surface of design thinking, but just especially with the ideate phase, trying to come up with ideas, trying to respect everybody's ideas, and even if there's some crazy things being thrown out, how can we expand on that and trigger different parts of the brain? So I work in Edmonton, Western Canada. I'm a zone manager, so I work directly with our dealers, and we tend to do that on a daily basis, right? We jump to conclusions with our dealers. We can't do this or that because of budgets, but really design thinking, focus on the end user, focus on the customer or dealers, and be open to listening to them. How can we expand on, and how can we improve things on a day-to-day basis?
Hi, I'm Aparna. As a part of 30 Under 30, I'm a part of the South Oakland Shelter team. We don't have candy at our station, but we do have a board game. South Oakland Shelter is a housing and homelessness services, nonprofit that functions mostly in the Oakland County area. They have a whole bunch of different services. They kind of support a whole bunch of different needs, and you'll learn more about them if you come to our booth. But I think for me, and I don't know if everyone knows this, but when we first started this program, kind of playing off of what Brendan was saying, that's literally all we know. We just knew that we were under 30. We were told, here's your nonprofit, go learn about them and figure out how you can help them, which is a very vague problem to deal with. I don't think any of us going into it knew exactly what we were getting ourselves into, but I don't think it can be iterated enough how important empathy is. And I think that, I had been in a design thinking workshop before I started the 30 Under 30 program. And I was like, okay, I got it. I know everything there is to design thinking. It's a simple process. You do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're done. But I think a lot of what I learned about at least the empathy stage is it's important to be empathetic. And I think we all try to be empathetic. We all try to think about our end user, but it's different to be immersive. And I think that's the key difference. It's you think you know somebody's experiences until you go talk to them, until you try to be that person. And then when you immerse yourself in their experience, that's when you truly understand what their needs are and what they're trying to do and the struggles that they're facing. I think another key thing for me personally was I thought that it would be kind of like a process of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in order. But I saw ourselves, at least amongst our team, we would go from empathy to ideating, and then we'd go back to empathy, and then we'd go to feedback and prototyping, and then we'd end back at empathy because we really didn't know what we were doing. And I think that's a little bit of the beauty of design thinking. It's a mindset and not a methodology. I work in the connected vehicle space. I don't think I brought that up earlier, so I'm just adding that in as a note.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm Samantha Martins, and I've been partnered with First Step. I have fallen in love with them. They're amazing. And I currently work in HR and diversity and inclusion. But a little bit about First Step. So First Step is one of our unique nonprofits. Their mission is to eliminate domestic violence and sexual assault, but they also have a shelter. So the theme of this year's 30 Under 30 program is homelessness, but First Step's clients, obviously, there's a whole other level of complexity that comes along with it. And so we went going through the design thinking process. Empathy, as everyone has mentioned, I think, was huge for us. Really going to the shelter and meeting with clients, we learned so much. And I think one of the biggest learnings for me was I wasn't really familiar with domestic violence and sexual assault and how prevalent it is. Just talking about it and learning how many people are in these situations has been such a learning. And that's one of First Step's mission is to raise awareness. And so empathy was huge for us, and not just for the clients. As we talked to them about some of our crazy ideas, we wanted to really understand how it would impact them. But not just for our clients, for First Step staff as well. So I think that was one of the biggest learnings through design thinking too, is you really want to think about not only the end user, which is huge, but also who else is involved and how it impacts them, and really empathizing with them as well. And I think, as everyone else mentioned too, one of my biggest learnings is taking the design thinking framework back to work, day-to-day work. So I too kind of knew about design thinking a little bit, but I realized we hadn't even scratched the surface, right? It has been such an immersive experience through 30 Under 30, and I'm learning how I can really bring that back to work. So I find myself now, when I'm talking to coworkers, we're talking about the end user all the time, and I think, well, let's go talk to them. Let's go put ourselves in these situations instead of just talking around them. So it's really, it makes you question your current processes, and it's been awesome just seeing how many doors can be open and how many really unique, wild ideas you can come up with. So it's been awesome, and we're so thankful to go through the program.
So all really good summaries of where you are and where you've been. I'm curious to know if it's changed your perception of Ford Motor Company as an employee.
Same sort of circle.
You don't have to go in line anymore. Raise your hands. It's okay.
Engineer, so stay in line.
Yeah, it's an engineer. So at Ford, we want everything to be process-oriented, very orderly. But I'm just curious to know how it impacted you.
I can start to maybe try to tackle that. So has it changed our perception of Ford Motor Company? I think it has. For me personally, it has. And for my peers in my group as well, you know, I think that it has, Sergio, you know, and of course, I mean, it's just been incredible because, you know, you get a job and your initial goal is, hey, Mom, I'm happy I have this job and I'm at this company, and there's no expectation that you would be sort of community activist or any sort of thing like that. It is thought to be just a very clear-cut gig. You know, I work for Ford, and what that means, I show up to an office for 8 hours, and I try to accomplish something in those 8 hours, and I leave for home, and then maybe that's when the creative aspects of my own life, the things I care about, start to take place. So those 8 hours become 8 hours that have become less interesting, and the hours after that is really where you start to find yourself. Now, what 30 Under 30 does is sort of flips the algorithm, and within those initial 8 hours, which are thought to be non-productive, et cetera, now you can kind of start to see some productivity in terms of the parts of your brain that you otherwise might leave at home, like the parts of your brain that care about your community, the people around you, and the ways your company might be impacting people. As a quick story, you know, myself and one of my friends, name's Wally Johnson, and we both went to Notre Dame, and we were both like full ride students to Notre Dame to a large extent, but that was because we didn't have a lot of money going to Notre Dame. What that meant was, you know, it sounds good, everything is paid for, but a lot of the experiences you have after you get to the university is very different. For instance, you know, you want to join a soccer club, that costs money after the fact. You want to be part of a science club, that costs money after the fact. You want to go on a ski trip, that costs money after the fact. You want to leave home for Thanksgiving. You want to go home for Thanksgiving, that costs money after the fact. That's all not included in sort of the full ride. So it is a full ride to a very limited extent. And our goal, he and I, was to put together some kind of a program to give kids what we call walk around money, or WAM. But really, and it sounds kind of ridiculous initially, but walk around money is how you meet the people that start to form your social network in college. It's the money that allows you to go beyond just classwork and start to engage in social activities where you can actually begin to build relationships that are outside of the pain of your curriculum and more towards sort of the joy of exploring campus life, right? So with that, we put together a scholarship fund, like, $10,000. That was my very first interaction with Ford Fund. I didn't know it existed. So we went into a meeting and a few people were there. Actually, Mike Schmidt was there. I would later come to know him as a Ford founder, but I thought these were just people at Ford who did regular jobs like myself, and they were just happy to be in the meeting. So that was my first interaction with Ford Fund. The good news there is that scholarship was approved. We got to fund 2 kids, Lewis and Deontay, both at Notre Dame. And the cool story there was, it was interesting because the day we announced the scholarship to them, one of them had already been thinking about dropping out because he owed too much money at home. He owed about $80 to someone, and they were kind of making it difficult for him to be on campus. The reason I bring this up is to say I thought that was like an offshoot, like something I was doing that was very different from what it means to be working at Ford. But now that I've come to sort of interact with Ford Fund more, I've come to understand that it is actually part of the fabric of Ford to do things like this. And I guess the follow-up to that story is we didn't get Ford funding for the next year, this academic year, for that scholarship. But I was at the Detroit homecoming event where I got to meet Mike Schmidt over some hors d'oeuvres and around too many people who were too powerful. And Mike Schmidt and I started sort of going back and forth with banter. I come to find out Mike Schmidt works for Ford Fund Education, where he then was like, hey, we might be able to give some life to the scholarship again for another year. So it was almost like, living on hope to hope, but like the second life that this scholarship found was through Ford Fund and through 30 Under 30. So Ford looks like a very different company to me from the day that I got accepted to work here and today.
Anybody else want to add in?
Yeah, sorry, Lane. I'll segue off Ish just with regards to how different the company looks from when I started. I've only been with the company 5 years, but I've been excited to see that design thinking is, being worked on and being implemented. If we want to be a big company or a changing company, then we need to, one, be involved with the community, but 2, change the way we think, right? And I think design thinking's really done that. I think about how vulnerable we've all been through this whole process, right? I think at one point, Steve and I were both sitting on Ishmael's lap and we were dancing, right. But we need to be taken out of our comfort zone, right? And be out there. So I'm just happy to see it. It has changed my opinion on Ford Motor Company, just that we're trying to tackle the way we think and move that in a different direction.
So what are your expectations now? So you've been through this program. Obviously, you got some exposure to the Ford Fund, to some of the leadership team that you might not have otherwise, to some nonprofits. I would hate to just have this end here.
And I think
So what are your expectations of?
And I think we would hate for it to end here as well. And I feel like I'm speaking for the 30 of us. We would hate to just stop here because of all the energy we've had from this and all the inspiration we've been feeling up until this point. And that's why I appreciate the privilege that we have being in this program and being trained in design thinking. And I think it's just like any privilege that you have with your identity, with your race, with your religion, whatever that privilege is. It reminds me of a quote by Muhammad Ali, who said that service is the rent that you pay to be here. And I think because we have the privilege of having gone through this program and being trained in design thinking, it's almost our responsibility to be able to share this with our teams, whether it's other organizations that we're involved with. I think it's upon us to take it upon us, not just to have it end here, but to think about how we can apply it to different aspects of our lives, how that empathy that we all talked about, that we kind of agree is one of the most pivotal points of design thinking. How can we apply that to other aspects of our lives, whether it's like with our relationships with our parents or our, I don't know, interaction with coworkers? How do we realize that like these are individuals with their own hosts of struggles and needs and things like that, and how can we be there for them just like we were there for to recognize the issues that we found in the nonprofits that we were working with.
I have a note to add. I think that like when I started this program, I guess what it did is it gave us all a good platform. And it gave us some kind of structure to be able to be like, you have this opportunity, this amazing opportunity to go out and do something and help somebody else. And I think that what I learned, and I was thinking about this morning, like tomorrow this all ends. Like, is what happens after 1 p.m. tomorrow? And I think that what kept coming back to me is, I just know now how much control I have over the world around me if I choose to make that difference. And I think that's what I would say. This is the start.
I would echo that, and I think, you know, we have such an awesome cohort, and I know we're going to stay connected, which is so exciting, and we've made so many amazing connections. And two, we have 2 groups of alumni that we're able to stay connected with too, so I would hope that we do just that. We all stay connected and utilize each other moving forward, and that the program stays strong. And that's a question that we all kind of had to Jim, is what does the future of the 30 Under 30 program look like in your eyes, and how could it grow and morph?
Renee, you know, the cool thing about 30 Under 30 is that it's been a collaborative process of a number of people. Really starting with Bill Ford and his office and Mary's team and the fund team, and just as importantly of all of you, because I think we've learned every year what makes it better. And to me, it's really your program. And I think the biggest contribution that I've made, I always say this to Renee, is I try to stay out of your way, and because we don't want to put boundaries on it. And I think the first year we did it in particular, we kept getting, you know, people would come, can I come see you for 15 minutes in your office? That's like, they wanted to know what the answer was, you know, like what's going to be on the exam at the end of the semester. And we kept saying there's no path forward, there's no boundaries, and and it's turned out, you know, greater than I think we've ever expected. And I know it's been a great experience for me to be able to tap into all of you, because we've taken the ideas. In some cases, we've been able to implement them. We've taken the ideas, the enthusiasm, and put it into other programs. And it really is like re-energizing the Ford Fund and the Volunteer Corps in many ways that multiplies out what you do. And so, you know, what the next iteration will be, hopefully will be even better as we go along. But, you know, we want to add in teams. We'd like to go globally. That's the goal, is to go globally, but it's not as easy as it sounds, because here it's very easy for us to walk across from the Dearborn offices. We have a lot of resources here. We have a lot of nonprofits we're embedded in. We have the HFLI team that does the design thinking piece of it. And the one thing I think that we all agree on that we don't want to do is to water it down too much. So how do you create that same experience in other places? But hopefully, as all of you go off into the world, I mean, we're already finding this where we have 30 Under 30 folks who are going to take assignments in other part of the world. So maybe they can be the next set of leaders who are sitting here in my seat or Renee's seat or whoever's seat in this process to take the lead in market. So we've already taken the design thinking process through the global programs into other places. We just had it in the HFLI team was just in Craiova. We were in Romania at the Ford Resource and Engagement Center, not working with employees, but with university teams. So your feedback is critical to how we roll this out, because we really want it to work for you and for the company and for the community. And you know, your passion for, you know, as I got to talk to some of you at the baseball games or the cocktail parties or wherever we were at over the last year, it's been interesting to learn about your passion for changing the world. And honestly, I don't know that I had that same passion when I was at my stage of your career. I can tell you honestly, I did not have that passion. And I wish I had have had it at that time. So you're inspiring the rest of us to push even harder.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I think it's mutual. I always think of the story when I walked in the train station with Renee. Just his attachment to an icon like that. I think he got emotional from his story, being connected to that. So I mean, we learn a lot from you guys as well in terms of what your impact is in the community.
Yeah.
So we have time for one more, I think, and then they're giving me the hurry up sign. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Lenny, you were gonna.
Yes. So I myself was at an event with a friend just last week, and I was sitting next to a woman, and she works with Matrix Services. And so we were talking about, what does she do there? And it's a local-based organization that helps people in the Detroit and greater Detroit community, children and adults. They do all kinds of different programming. And I said, so do you work with the Ford Fund at all? And she's like, yes, we love the Ford Fund. And she's like, Terry Berry's on our board. And it just shows that the Ford Fund has its reach in all different organizations across Metro Detroit. And for me, that's very impressive and very inspiring to work for a company that has the Ford Fund and is very involved in our local community.
Thank you very much. So thanks to all of you again for coming today. Thanks to the teams for all the great work that you're putting in, and we will continue to make sure that we're supporting you in every way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you all.